Port. Joel Hodelman, how are you doing today, man?
Good. How are you doing? Happy Pizza Day.
Happy Pizza Day. This is it's a good day, man. I haven't had pizza in a while that we were just talking about. And so I got my pizza. I'll show it. I got some Blaze pizza, 4 cheese. I'm a plain cheese guy with a little bit of dipping ranch on the side.
I got a Hawaiian pizza
Oh,
from
dude, did you
Pizza
get
Pizza.
pineapple?
I got pineapple. Is that controversial?
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Pineapple and bacon, sausage, or ham or something.
that's hilarious. Um, I'm more of a plain cheese, but that's just me. Um, oh, dude, it's so good though. So good.
It's not too bad.
Um,
Yours look better than me.
yeah. Anyway, pizza day is pretty crazy because it's like just a life changing amount of money spent on Bitcoin or spent on pizza. And I was trying to look up where those Bitcoin went, and no one knows. There's no record of any Papa John's holding on to it or anything. And I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. Um, but Pizza Day, for anyone that doesn't know, is it's a celebration because on May 22nd, 2010. By the way, he's a Florida man, so I didn't know that. Yeah, but he's a Florida man. He bought two Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin, which at the time was about $41 or $42 worth of Bitcoin, which is absolutely insane because now that's worth like $766 million in today's price at whatever $76,000 a Bitcoin. Um, but yeah, I guess he was just a programmer, and there's a Bitcoin guy that worked at Papa John's, I guess, and so that's how they connected and were able to do the transaction. And it was like the first commercial transaction that was ever recorded. So he kicked it off. I think it's pretty cool. As we were talking, like I know he said he didn't regret it. I don't know how you don't regret that.
I
I don't
think you
know.
don't regret it because you know that it needed to happen for it to become what it became. So, like, you're part of history. Yes, if you do the conversion like you posted today, it's a little over $700 million in present day value, but we don't get to 700 plus $1 million of present day value of 10,000 Bitcoin if the first payment doesn't happen. So it's pretty cool that like he becomes the first person to do it, right? Like that would be pretty sweet.
Somebody,
Like if it were me, somebody had to do it, right? And like ultimately that's what Bitcoin's for is I think is not just a store of value, it's something that you're spending and using and replacing and earning and saving and repeat the cycle. And he did that. And if everybody just held on to all the Bitcoin that they had back in 2010 and everybody since then is held on to it since then too, right? There's where does Bitcoin go? I don't think it's where it would be at today, right? So people have got to sell their Bitcoin. People have to spend their Bitcoin. You can't just hodl it forever. I think it's hodl to use it. So um, I think it's cool. And today when you think about it in 2026, there are a lot of places that you can actually like freely, in terms of ease, spend your Bitcoin now, right? And it all starts with him. Like it was difficult for him to do it at first, I imagine, right? Having to find somebody and, using kind of somebody to go through the systems, be able to pay it for you. But today, especially if you're just doing like a Square terminal in the United States, you can just go right up and do Lightning. You can go to Shake and Shack or Shake Shack, whatever that's called, and get yourself a burger, right? Like that doesn't happen if somebody doesn't first make it done earlier, right? So
yeah. And I mean, you could even say like the odds of someone holding on to 10,000 Bitcoin through that entire process. Like, I mean, it was a couple of cents, at the time. Could you imagine? Like, that like I would I would have sold it like a couple $100 probably, or like $1,000. Make 10x your money. Like, it's so hard to say that someone would hold on to 10,000 Bitcoin. Uh, yeah, but it is really cool because now it is part of history. People celebrate. I saw some group chats that like pizza places were offering like 70% discounts if you pay in Bitcoin in California. Mexican magician posted something about that, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. I would have paid in Bitcoin, but I was in a really big hurry, and it's like a chain restaurant, so I don't think they would have accepted it, but I should have probably tried. Uh, but no, I agree. It had to be done. The first one, it's over with, and now he's in the history books for doing it. So props to him. Uh, I don't know. Either way, I still would have like a little pit in my stomach of like, dude, I
Oh,
I,
I
I,
think
I
you
could be
have
on an
to.
island. I could be on an island.
Exactly. I could own all of the pizza chains in the world.
I could
Well,
own Papa
not that
John's.
much, but yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude. I wanted to go get Papa John's, and yeah, he was an asshole. I didn't like him. Uh, I was the guy right at the show up. It's 10:30 in the morning, and I'm waiting at the door. He unlocks it and then just ignored me. And I was like, standing there for like 5 minutes, and he's like, "Have you ordered yet?" I was like, "No, I just got to order one pizza." And he's like, "Well, I have 64 to order, or I have 64 to make before I can get to yours. It's gonna be like 30 to 40 minutes." I was like, "Geez, like, all right." So anyway, I didn't get Papa John's. I got Blaze Pizza in honor of Laszlo. Uh, it is what it is, but happy Pizza Day. I hope someone in the chat at least has pizza.
Yeah, I want to know what everybody has on their pizza. I got Hawaiian pizza, and people either think that pineapple on pizza is the greatest sin of the world or is something that's good. So, but we
No,
got
I
to
think
have people
I
here.
I actually don't mind pineapple on pizza, but the fact that it's such a big controversial thing, I think it's hilarious that you brought it on.
I had to. It's Canadian. As much as it's called Hawaiian pizza, it's Canadian.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, actually just responding to someone's tweet here, I confirmed it with Grok that yeah, Greek-born Canadian Sam Panalopoulos created it in 1962 at a satellite restaurant in Chatham, Ontario, by tossing canned pineapple onto a pizza, inspired by sweet, sour Chinese flavors.
that's funny.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Fun facts of the day.
Most things are Canadian when you come to it. Baseball's Canadian, hockey's Canadian, basketball's Canadian, football's Canadian. That'll all be controversial too.
American football? Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
That's Canadian?
Yep. It's all been played either by was invented by a Canadian or was played first here in Canada.
Huh. You sit on a throne of lies.
Uh,
No, that's cool.
Satoshi was probably Canadian too.
Satoshi.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I really have for fun facts about Pizza Day. I tried to do more research, but it's kind of hard to find like too much information. I really wish I knew that like maybe Papa John's hung on to it, but I didn't see
Probably
anything.
not.
So it is what it is. Anyway, happy Pizza Day, guys. That's all I got on pizza. Um, all right, I did notice though, dude. Uh, I think this is gonna be kind of problematic for a lot of Americans because mortgage rates did just hit 6.8% about in the United States. Now, my wife and I, to put it into context, we bought our first house in 2018 for about $365,000. And our mortgage was like 5%, our mortgage rate. And then we refinanced in like 2020 and we got down to like a 3%. And that saved us like $1,000 a month on our mortgage, which is pretty crazy. Like 2% difference in mortgage rates dropped our mortgage payment by $1,000 a month.
It's huge.
And now, since we've moved from Colorado to Texas, I don't even remember what our rate was in Texas, but now in Florida, our rate is like 6.25%, which is like pretty high. I hate having a mortgage this high. It's really frustrating. Uh, and we were like hoping, Trump was going to get in, not start any wars. He was going to be pumping our economy. Inflation was going to come down. And then we were going to get a new Fed chair who was going to lower rates immediately, drop everything, kind of back to zero, because that's kind of what Trump has been saying. Like, we should be dropping it like 100 basis points every meeting. And now there's talks of raising rates. And mortgage rates are already just hit like 6.8% in the United States. And I think that's going to be a really big problem because the average house is about $400,000 to $500,000 here in the United States. And so your mortgage, if you put 20% down on a $500,000 house, your mortgage on average, this is estimated, obviously other factors can come into it, is going to be over $3,500 a month. So $3,500 a month or more just in a mortgage payment for the average house in America, which is absolutely insane. Like, how much money do you have to make? And you have to make some pretty decent money. Like, even if you're making, say, $10,000 a month, you take out taxes and then you take out like a lot of your other bills, your electricity, all that crap, your cable.
Property taxes, insurance. Like there's a lot
Exactly.
there that just goes along with owning the home.
Yeah. And then you're not even talking about maintenance. And now you have a $3,500 mortgage. Like, you're probably spending about 50% or more of your net income, not your gross, so your net income on your mortgage. And so if your mortgage is higher than 50% of your monthly expenses, like, that's not good. And that would mean that you're making $120,000 or more to be able to. I don't even know if you qualify for a $500,000 house on making 120K. I don't think you do. I think you have to make north of like 150 to qualify for a $500,000 house. And that's going to be a big problem when no one can afford the median house or the payments. Your salary is not going up. Inflation is crushing you on every corner. Insurance is going up, especially in Florida. Even my neighbor, they had Progressive and they just dropped out of Florida. They gave him like a 30-day notice that he had to find new insurance because they just dropped him. And I'm like, people are really going to be struggling. And the fact that our mortgage rates are up to 6.8, no one's going to be able to buy a house. Like, I don't know if this is going to cause some sort of another housing crisis, or I know that the amount of houses for sale and the amount of people shopping for houses is at like an all-time gap. So there's way more sellers right now than buyers because no one can afford. All these boomers are selling their house that they bought for a loaf of bread, are trying to sell it for 100x what they bought it for. And people like you and me are coming around like, hey, you have outdated kitchen, the roof needs replaced, the furnace needs replaced, like, and they're asking them, 500,000 to $1 million for these places that haven't been updated ever. And somehow you're supposed to also like, just take a 6.8% mortgage rate on top of that. It's
It's wild.
insanity. It's absolutely insanity. And I think that's going to cause a lot of people are going to get pretty upset. Like if inflation hasn't made you upset yet, I think in the next year or two, if something doesn't change, like we're going to see a lot of civil unrest, if you will.
I don't know how it doesn't make people upset. And you just start getting into some of the numbers of cost of living and where the dollars are going and all of that. Like it just frustrates me. And I mean, you've made a good point of, the houses are for sale, but there's nobody there to buy it. So what's going to happen? Because I know in Toronto right now, the condo market, there are more condos out there by, I think it's the largest gap in history right now. Nobody wants to buy a condo, and that's all they've put up in Toronto, right? And that's going to pop, and then that's going to hit the rest of Canada, right? I was looking today to confirm it that it's over 60% of mortgages are up for renewal in Canada. So here in Canada, we have term mortgages. So you can get like a 1 year term. Most people are doing like 2 to 5 year terms. But most people sold and bought or got into the market in 2020 when we had historic lows on interest rates and locked in those interest rates. Most of them on variable, so they haven't like they have gone up, but those interest rates are going to be up for renewal this year and are going to hurt a lot of Canadians that have to renew this year and are going from, like a 2.5% interest rate to a 4.5. That's what it kind of is here in Canada. So, or at least here in Ontario. And for us, the average Ontario home, I believe, and this is average, and I should have looked at the median, but it's over $700,000, right? So like that's just going to kill people. I know my brother, he just bought a house. I think he was close to 600,000, and I don't think anything has been changed or done in that house since like the 80s, if that. And and that's how he could get into the market.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, dude, we bought a townhome and we paid, I believe, $460,000 for this townhome. It is 2,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms. Um, but it's outdated, man. Like the floors are still I believe it was built in the 1980s, 1982, I think. The floors are outdated. Like there's white grandma tile everywhere. It's like the kitchen got an update that looks like it was, I don't know, redone in the 90s. Like the countertops I could probably just rip off because I think they're
Yeah.
just glued and they've been glued. And like who, how are people affording this? Like why would you want to pay $500,000 for a piece of crap? And I just don't see where that goes. I did have some fun facts though. Um I did hear on a podcast, so I had to do a little research, but the poorest state in the United States is Mississippi. And I didn't know like how much people make in Mississippi. But per household, the average is $56,000. And for the individual person, it's about $31,000. So I know homes in Mississippi are probably extremely like way cheaper, but like what can you afford if a household makes $56,000 and your mortgage is supposed to be your average, the average house is 400 to 500,000. You can't afford a house. Now, what kind of piqued my interest was so Mississippi, because the United States is everyone, we make more money here. Um, in the UK, they actually is like they make a little bit more money than we do per household. And Canada makes about what people in Mississippi make
Yep.
in US terms. So Canada's household is about 55,000. So right on par with Mississippi. Same with the individual. The UK, they make about 74,000. So the UK makes more per household than Mississippi, but that's our lowest state. Like that's our poorest state, which is absolutely wild. And then of course I had to look up Florida. Um, we make about 105,000 per household.
It's
And
almost double.
so about double. And individually people make around 74,000. That's your average salary. But dude, if you look at houses around Florida, there's no way you can afford to buy these outdated homes, unless you want to live like an hour away from the beach. Which why would you want to do that if you live in Florida?
Exactly. And that's how my brother did it. Like my brother's not living in a city. He's living like an hour north of like a small city, you know? Like that's how people that I know are affording to get into the market is they move into the middle of nowhere and then they commute for over an hour to work, and I just see it as hating my life if I were to do that, but like that's how people are gonna try and make it work. And it's sad that that's what people are forced into, and it's not by their choice. Like a lot of people have gone to school, they have done the quote unquote right things to do, and then you have inflation and government spending and money debasement and all of that. That is none of our decision, is completely out of our control, and we get hit by it. And you see that when you go to the grocery store, you see that when you go to the gas pump. And like you said, you were hoping that when Trump gets in, no new wars, interest rates are going to come down, gas is going to come down, groceries are going to get cheaper. And, unfortunately, kind of the opposite has happened. And, I have maybe a little bit of hope that some of that turns around over the next little while. But at the same time, I can see it not. And it's going to hurt a lot of people based on somebody else's decision that is completely out of our own decision, other than, if we bring it back to Bitcoin. I think that's where we can have hope and we can save and protect ourselves that way through Bitcoin. But without Bitcoin, like, there's no hope for anybody other than throwing it into an S&P or throwing it into, an IPO with SpaceX and hoping that, you're going to make a killing there. But like, that's just not how it should be. And, my heart breaks when I think about people going through what they're going through. And it's not to say that I'm not also going through it, but I can have some hope that Bitcoin is there for me, and Bitcoin's going to help.
Yeah, I honestly don't know where I would be without Bitcoin because I the only other option that I would have gone with is probably like the S&P 500, maybe gold, but gold
Sports
didn't
betting.
do any. Yeah, sports betting. I mean, that's why you
Like,
see it
honestly,
blow up.
that's a whole lot of, people do sports betting is try and get ahead. And it's like, that's not something that should be. You got Polymarket doing everything you can gamble on and bet on and all that sort of stuff, right? Like, that to me is just a sign of a broken economy. And, I kind of think it's laughable when you see the that free grocery store or whatever that is in New York City, and it's sponsored by Polymarket. It's like, Polymarket is trying to look like a good sponsor, and I'm your friend, but they're just preying on, the lowest of low there that are in, difficult situations, that are spending money on, sports gambling to, market gambling, all that sort of stuff, whatever you want to call that. And, it's just sad.
Well, it's
It's
the
not a
only
healthy
way.
economy.
It's the only way. Like, let's be honest. That's probably why shitcoins did so well, right? Everyone was gambling on them because you were shooting for that 1000x, that 3000x. You were hoping to put in $100 and turn it into $10,000, $20,000. And that's what you can do with sports gambling. But like, how are you going to be that consistent? Like, are you going to be crushing it with betting on Polymarket to see if Trump says the word Iran 10 times in a speech, like gambling on those types of things? Like, it's, I don't, we're going to have to see some sort of change from the government because individually, the only solution I can see is you have to invest in something. The S&P 500 is at all-time highs again. It just won't. It just. If you look at the chart, it's literally just a hockey stick. from like the past 26 years. There's like a dip in 2008 and then 2020. But
Stop.
otherwise, it's just up and to the right. And especially lately, since 2020, it's incredible. And I'm like, it's all because of money printing. And you're paying, even if you're making 10% on the S&P per year, you're still getting crushed by inflation.
I
Like you're
mean,
barely
they'll tell
making
you you're
money.
not because they're giving you lower inflation dollar value. But like if you and I go to the grocery store, we can tell that inflation is higher than the CPI and the PPI that they put out, right?
Yeah.
So people will see it and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm beating inflation by a 10% return," but you're not. And if you look at the S&P 500, I think it's the top 10 companies in the S&P right now equate to 40% of
I
the
saw that.
S&P 500 index, right? So, and if I were haven't done my research on this, but I would take a pretty reasonably educated guess that each of those 10 have government subsidy contracts and are getting money from the government to do certain things. So it's not even like a fair market that way that they've earned their dollars that way either.
Yeah, I think it like the main ones obviously like the Mag 7, like Google, Apple, Tesla, Meta, and yeah, they make up, I think you're right, about 40% of the entire S&P 500. And I don't know about you, but that sounds kind of scary because what
Hmm?
happens if any of those valuations go down? Like what happens if they all miss their quarterly expectations and they all drop, 10%, 15%, like people's retirement funds. And the fact that we haven't even seen like a big dip in the S&P 500 in so long, I'm like, it's probably due for some sort of catastrophic thing to happen. Like that's just how the world works. Um, I don't know a solution, and I think people are going to demand something, and that's where you can talk about UBI. Uh,
Hmm?
that's a solution that the government will come up with probably stable coins. Um, but then Jeff Bezos went on CNBC this past week, and I turned that on. My wife actually texted me because he went on at like 8 a.m. or something, and she texted. She's like, "Are you watching this?" And I was like, "No, I had no idea." So I turned it on, and he was talking about how we need to not tax the bottom 50% of basically the income on the bottom 50% of the people in the United States, or people like under 100, making under $100,000, I believe, or something. Because the fact that everyone's screaming tax the rich, he needs to pay his fair share. It's like what is a billionaire's fair share in taxes when he pays $300 million in taxes from selling some shares of Amazon? Like what's the fair share that the US government deserves and that they're going to waste? Because if he sells his shares, gets taxed, and writes a check to the US government for $300 million, that's not going to make anyone's life better in New Jersey. Or, the school teacher who's complaining about her pay, her life is not going to get better if the rich write checks to the government. So taxing the rich clearly will not do a thing. Uh, what do you think? What are your opinions on dropping income tax on the lower 50% of income earners?
My opinion is tax is theft and just get rid of tax altogether.
Okay,
Like
but
that
I
is
know, but
my that
realistically,
honestly is my no, that is my realistic thing is just get rid of taxes. Why are we taking dollars from other people to give to other people? If you don't work, you don't earn, you don't eat. Like that is honestly my, and that might sound cutthroat, but where I see it is that if somebody is down and out, like you should be helping the down and out person. Like you have a brother, you have a sister, and they're down and out. Like that's your responsibility. If you have a mother and a father who are struggling, like that's your responsibility as a son, right? Or a daughter, or whatever that is, right? And instead, what I see the social safety net of the government has created is, we all have neighbors, we all have friends that we know are on tough times. But like if I'm being honest, my first thought is that, oh, the food bank. Like just go to the food bank, right? I don't need to go to my cupboard and go make you a meal or get you food, right? I always pass off my responsibility to somebody else. And honestly, if we got rid of taxes, maybe you can make an argument that there should be some sales tax, but I don't personally think that that needs to happen either. But like, I think you have more spending if you lower taxes, and there would be an economic boom if you just got rid of taxes and had people having the money that they're supposed to have. And you get what you get in terms of what you can earn. And I know there's going to be people on the fringes, and there's going to be people that, like, what about people who have, disabilities and all of this and whatnot? And, my heart breaks for them. But at the same time, I think that's where, like, we as people help those people, not, okay, big daddy government, go help those people for me.
I
And that's
do,
the world that I want to live in. The world, I don't want to live in the world that, has free grocery stores that are run by the government, because just name me one thing that the government has run well or run properly.
or improved. Yeah.
No.
Once they take over, it goes to shit. Um, I do agree. I would much rather have people support those other people. I think people would. I would not be opposed to some sort of government program to help the you know the people with disabilities. Um, those kinds of people that truly that's another problem is that we have a lot of people that are on welfare that claim they have anxiety and so they can't work. Who's diagnosing this? Like, I have stress, I have anxieties. Like, where's my check? Like, you don't think that like the plumber or the, construction guy that wakes up at 5 a.m. to get on the street to pave your roads doesn't have stress in his life, or his back's not hurting and he could just sit there and collect a check from the government? But yet we have these people that are taking advantage of these government programs. But my point is, I think there should be something for those types of people, because I just couldn't see them like fending for their own food. Like, I would need something for them. But other than that, that's all we really need. Like, protection, we need police and fire.
Yeah.
But like, no, all these taxes should definitely go away. Um, I just think realistically, the government will never do that, because that would require them to downsize so substantially and take pay cuts, and it would basically mean that they're failed, and they're the ones that have to vote on it, so they would never do it. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Well,
it's
the other
like,
thing too is I don't think people will actually ask for that either, because they don't want to take on the responsibility of helping their neighbor out. Like, it's kind of, as much as we all complain about taxes, it's also kind of easy to say, big daddy government, go help my neighbor. I don't actually want to put in the work. I don't have the time. I don't have the ability to do that. Right. So you kind of got both parties that aren't actually willing to do the necessary work. One out of, it takes a pay cut away from them. And then for us, it becomes we actually have to do more, which, if you look at it as time is money, we're talking about the same thing, just in a different way.
um, another point that, sorry, that Bezos brought up was kind of, people seem to think money as like a pie chart. Like, the rich have all this money. Like, they have, 90% of the wealth, and all of us peasants have like this little 10% sliver that we're all splitting, right? But that's not how money works. Money is, it flows. Like, there's more and more and more money. So just because someone else is a billionaire doesn't mean that they stole that from you. And I think people really get that in their head, like, rich people are evil because they stole that money. Like, not, it's not a pie chart. Like, Does that make sense? It's not like food. I believe he used this example. It's not like food in a famine or like water in a drought. It's like there's unlimited resources for money. Like everyone can be pretty wealthy, but you have to work for it. It can't just be given to you. You can't just give everyone $10 million and, oh, now we're all rich. Like that's not how life works. Because if you give everyone $10 million, then that $10 million will literally be worth back
Nothing.
down to $1,000 type thing. Everyone, it's I know the dollar doesn't have scarcity, but if you give everyone $10 million, that makes it even less scarce. And so that it physically can't work like that. And I think people should really understand that rich people are not the evil ones here. Yes, there are evil billionaires and evil rich people that do shady stuff, like, hello, Bill Gates, you know, um, that bugs me. But there's a lot of good billionaires who, make tens or hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs around the world. And
Well,
they
it's
give you
jobs.
they give you a service
Yeah.
that everyone has an iPhone,
Or a
everyone
product.
orders from Amazon, everyone watches Netflix. Those are all billion-dollar companies. You use them every day. That's why it's a billion-dollar company. So
Yeah,
if you
you
want
like
money,
Bill
produce,
Gates.
huh?
You and I probably hate Bill Gates, or not hate Bill Gates, but like despise the man. Like he also created and invented, and built and developed software and computers and all that sort of stuff that we have benefited from medical to all of that. Now, yes, when I look at, vaccines and all that sort of stuff, you talk about shadiness. Like, yeah, I see a lot of that too. But even somebody that I despise and reject on, like a moral, ethical thing, I can also look at him and say, he has actually done quite a bit of good for the world as well. And
You might
that's
want to look into Bill Gates a little more. I believe he actually kind of stole Microsoft. He didn't create it.
it's true.
So he's a shady one. I don't trust him. But I think there will be more opportunities, and I know people are like really scared with AI, but like you can make a lot of money with AI too. It can propel you forward instead of being scared of it. There's that type of thing too. Use it to your advantage. Help it help you in some sort of fashion. New technology always creates new wealth. Just like Bitcoin created new wealth, the internet created new wealth, construction.
Yeah.
So use AI. Use AI. That's what I think.
That's what you think as somebody who doesn't use AI too much.
I'm starting to. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
good at it. You just watch.
All right. I'm excited. No, I'm excited to see where AI is going. I actually saw someone, um, Table Salt or something like that. He's a Canadian account that is more political, but I follow him on X a little bit, and he kind of posted something that he could see like the next generation coming up actually just becoming minimalist in terms of the technology that they use, because as much as AI helps, it's not something that is actually making us smarter, is making us better in many ways. It's to use it to like a minimal way, but to actually still think for yourself. Because everybody right now, if they need to figure out anything, they just go to ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or whoever or what, and just type in, like we used to Google things. Like who Googles anything anymore? I certainly don't Google much anymore. I just type it in and don't have to think for myself. But you got a math question, you don't use a calculator anymore. You plug it into whatever, and oftentimes it doesn't even give you the right answer back.
But I mean, people said the same thing about the internet.
Yeah.
You're being able to research and look up anything. Like no one's gonna know history anymore. It's like no, actually, people actually they found out the truth about history. Is what happened. Is you're able to not read, what was programmed in the public schools for you to read.
But how
Uh,
long has that taken though? Like that actually surprisingly has taken a long time, because I don't think people have really looked at history up until the last couple of years. And we've had the internet since like before you and I were actually born.
Yeah, when was the internet boom the biggest? In like
Well, like in the 90s would have
80s?
been the boom, but yeah, it was developed in what, the 80s or maybe earlier than that. I'm naive being a 90s baby, but
Same.
just kind of growing up with it. But yeah, like it took, I would say a good 20, 30 years for people to actually sort of look at what history is and think for themselves in ways, in the way that they use the internet with the information that they have at their fingertips. And I think a lot of that is podcasts like this, and people kind of doing their own talking, and bringing up conspiracy theories to different ways of thinking, to going against the norm, right? Like we've decentralized information through the internet, and that's something that the podcast movement has really done, right? And I think that's where people then have gone down their own rabbit hole of finding different things, looking at different information and all of that.
Yeah,
But it
but
took a long time.
it's accelerated,
Yeah,
right? Like it took a long time to get there, but now it's just accelerated, and so AI is just part of that acceleration. Um, I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna take people's jobs though, so that sucks. But I don't know. I
it
agree.
is, but I think it's also going to create a whole lot of jobs in ways that we didn't think it was going to create. Like there
Yeah,
are people who said the same thing back in, 1920 when automobiles were coming out, and this is going to take away from the horses, and all of that, right? And like the car industry is a huge industry and a huge job growth and all that. Like, how many jobs are we fighting over here in Ontario because GM is pulling out a plant, or Toyota's pulling out a plant, or the EV plant that they were supposed to put in whatever city or town isn't being put in, right? Like, we're now, 100 years past that, and we're fighting about jobs leaving or not being created for the automobile industry, right? So all of this job and tech is just going to create different jobs and different roles and different things and different abilities for people to make money. Like now you could, instead of going to a job, like you host a server, or you host something, or you provide, something for like infrastructure for people to be able to, plug into.
yeah. I mean, the example I think of is if if you have put construction back on your head, and it's like you have 15 people all digging using shovels, and then a guy comes along with like an excavator or something that like digs, and it's like, wait, but this is going to get rid of like all these jobs because we don't need 15 people digging with these shovels. And it's like, well, if that's the case, then might as well dig with teaspoons. Like let's all just get in there with our little teaspoon. If that's the case, like no, things evolve, and those people end up working somewhere else,
Yeah.
finding new professions, or getting paid by the government to sit on their butt. So that too.
Yeah, that needs to change too. But
Do you want to talk about the Strait of Hormuz again?
yeah, we can talk about that. I don't think we haven't really talked too much about it. So
Okay. Um, because it was pretty fascinating. Like, I don't know. I'll let you go kick it off. You kick it off.
yeah, so this week we all heard that I think it's $7.7 billion that Iran is sitting on in Bitcoin, or using Bitcoin as insurance for like as protection essentially for ships to move in and out of the waters there. And I think it's pretty important, especially when you see, they have their tether. Stable coins can be frozen as much as, they're not tied to a government or anything like that. They can be frozen. And, a couple weeks ago they had their tether frozen, and, they've moved to Bitcoin. And, if you want to send Bitcoin, you can send Bitcoin. There's no way to stop that, right? And that's what they're using as payment. And I think it's something that is really interesting to watch. Kind of when I see those headlines, I kind of think to myself, like, is it really happening? Is it actually happening? But it seems to be, to some degree at least. And when I first got introduced to Bitcoin in 2013, the guy who introduced it to me always said that it would reach the level needed for international trade. And it was the thing that would really propel international trade. And when we talk about governments not being able to trust one another, a way that they weaponize the dollar to hurt another country and all that is weaponizing the dollar, devaluing it, printing it, bonds, all that sort of stuff. Where and being able to freeze it, putting sanctions and all that too, right? Like that's a huge weaponization. As much as, do I want Iran to have money? Do I want Iran to be able to have nukes? Do I want Iran to do all this and that? A lot of the reason why they're doing that is because of what the United States has done to their dollar and the strong arm that they have over them because that's the world reserve currency is the US dollar. If we all move to Bitcoin, we have a currency that we can trust one another, and though we don't have to trust the other person because we can trust the dollar. And I think that's kind of where we're moving. And it'll be really interesting to see where this exactly goes. And I can see some stuff come out now that, flooding Bitcoin that, don't want to use Bitcoin because, that's Iran and terrorists and all of that. But it really just comes down to like not needing permission, not having to trust the person who's giving you the money, but trusting that the money is true and fair and all of that. So
I think it should be a bigger headline. Like I know since we're on X constantly, like we see it all the time. But honestly, not that many people probably even recognize how big of a deal this is. That I mean, for international trade, like it's pretty huge if you can use Bitcoin, but the fact that people are going to or going that direction because yeah, Tether froze about 344 million stable coins, USDT or USDC, one of
yeah,
those.
T.
So it froze those. Oh yeah, Tether, duh.
Yeah.
So it froze those, and that's like a people don't really like that. If you can free someone's dollars from transacting and trading, that's not a good sign. And that's like, what Bitcoin was made for. Be your own bank. You can have your own currency. And I think it's only going to grow. Like, what a pain in the ass is it now because, the Strait is closed, or I don't even know if it's open now. Now it's like, I don't even know. But, people are like trying to trade oil, and it's like, if you don't want to use the dollar, how do you trade? Like what else could you really use? You're using someone else's fiat currency, which is probably weaker than the dollar, and so you're kind of losing on that trade anyway. Um, and so yeah, the U.S. has a monopoly on that. I mean that's why they call it like the petrodollar.
Mhm.
And I think we're really trying to defend that. And the fact that a country is like, hey, we're going to route this through Bitcoin, I believe it's through insurance of some sort.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I'm not even sure how that works, some insurance service, but it's supposed to be like an estimated $10 million. I don't know if that was per day or per week or per month or whatever, but that's pretty dang cool, man. If people are using Bitcoin for one of its main purposes, peer to peer without a third party.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing though too is that they're using Bitcoin and not, what is faster because that's what we've all been told XRP is, and XRP is going to, surpass Bitcoin because it's faster. You can build more on it and all this sort of stuff, and that's not what they're choosing to use. They're choosing to use the slow horse in the race that way of Bitcoin because they can trust it. Nobody's going to freeze it.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty badass, man. Uh, we'll see if like other countries start to do this more. I just feel like it's only big news in if you live in the crypto world, right? Like no one else really. They might read a headline like they're using Bitcoin, like thought that was a scam, but like it's kind of a signal, right? It's kind of
I
like
think it's a huge signal, right? And we talk about, oh, somebody bought pizza in 2010. Like if this was 2010, you'd be like, oh, like ha ha ha, magic internet money, bought pizza with it, and write it off. What does it look like in 10 years from now? What does it look like in 15 years from now? What does it look like 16 years from now of, international trade being done in Bitcoin? Like it
yeah.
can only grow, right? I don't particularly seeing it going the other direction back to zero.
Well, no. I mean, first of all, doesn't Adam Back have a buy at like 1 cent for all of it?
Right.
No, that is kind of crazy that, I mean, Bitcoin is only like, what, 17 years old and it's already developed into this. I mean, we were talking about the velocity of like technology, right? And it's like, man, now Bitcoin went from zero to $76,000 right now, and it's already being used for international trade to circumvent the United States dollar.
Yeah.
Do you think
Actually, and
someone would
much.
have believed you if back then it's like, hey man, you're spending $10,000 for two pizza or 10,000 Bitcoin for two pizzas in 16 years. This is going to be used for international trade to avoid Tether to seize their own or freeze their own stable coin from usage. Pretty
Yeah,
wild.
that's wild. And when I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2013, the guy who introduced it to me was saying that, for Bitcoin to be used in international trade, it had to be worth $500,000. And we're significantly under $500,000, and it's already being considered in international trade. So, from, what people were talking about in 2013, because I don't think that's just a number that popped up into his head. That was stuff that he was learning and researching and hearing. Um, it's grown faster than what people thought it would grow that way. So I think you're right that it's something that people aren't talking about enough and aren't seeing as a big deal, but it really is a big deal, and it's not something that the mainstream's going to pick up. It's only going to be, you know, crypto or, Bitcoin X that's going to talk about it, but it really is a big deal, and it's a huge shift.
One thing I really hate about a lot of these headlines, though, too, is how Bitcoin's been kind of like politicized. Like, like the Democrats don't really like Bitcoin because like Republicans like it type thing. And so I don't like that it's like, Bitcoin is for everyone. It's for you, it's for your neighbor, it's for your enemy. Anyone can use it and it's permissionless. So that's like, you know, this is kind of showing it. It's like, hey, a terrorist group in whatever country can use it, just like your Christian pastor can, just like, you know, you and I, just normal dudes can use it. Like it's for anyone. Um, and there's nothing anyone can really do about it, which
And
is,
that's okay. We don't need to censor people's money. If you don't want someone to, buy something or move money, like, don't interact with that person.
yeah,
Like, that's the like, if you don't want somebody dealing with Iran, then offer something better that somebody doesn't have to go to Iran, right? Rather than sanctioning their money and sanctioning, the oligarchs and all that, like you see in Russia, and it's just weaponization of the dollar, which I don't necessarily blame the governments for doing it, because it's a tool that they have in their toolbox that they can use to be able to do the political things that they want to do, you know, in the world. And I think that's part of the issue, is that, Americans are trying to do things in other nations in the world. Um, but yeah, I really do think Bitcoin is going to be something that pops that, and because you can't sanction Bitcoin.
yeah. But speaking of Tether, dude, before we have to get off here, it was kind of big news that Tether buying into Strike. A lot of people use Strike now. It's not Strike, it's 21
Yeah.
technically, correct? I just wanted to mention this really quick because I don't know how I feel about it. I don't think I know enough information, but Tether buying the majority stake into 21, which is fine, free market kind of. You can do what you want. Um, but they did just, they're part of the government now. Like Tether is kind of part of the government if you think about it.
Yeah, they're supporting the government by, because they're not, like, yes, they have Bitcoin that supports and pegs the coin to the dollar or whatever, but they're also buying up bonds. So, like, that's where I think they have gotten in bed with the government is kind of what they're doing on the bond end of stuff of holding their par value to the dollar. And that's where they're, I don't want to say they're getting away, but that's where they're having, like, I think they did that to have the ease in terms of developing and having, not having regulators come down on their back and saying that people can't use it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to freeze Iran's stable coins, like clearly the government's in their ear, like they're together. So I'm like, do I really want the government? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I guess I'll just wait and see uh, if more information comes out because I like Strike. That's where I DCA, and I'm like, if Tether owns the majority of 21, I saw that Jack Mahler said he still has full control over Strike because they're
Mm.
separate. Um, but how long does that last? And then what happens if they do merge 21 and Strike, and now Tether is in control of one of the largest United States, besides like Coinbase, Kraken, like Bitcoin only exchanges, and now Tether's in control of that, and the government controls Tether. Just kind of a little warning, like be aware if that's the exchange you use.
Yeah. And like I'll say this, I'm a fan of Jack.
Same.
I kind of went back and forth with him on X this week a bit about it. And like to me, I get what he was saying about Tether being important for, African countries and Latin American countries because their dollars are being hyperinflated. So, you go to work in the morning at 8 o'clock, eggs are $4, and then you come home at night and they're $12. Like I might be, hyperbole here, but like that's kind of what's happening in those markets. So the idea is that you have a stable coin that, because Bitcoin is going up and down and has volatility, can someone who is already experiencing hyperinflation in their currency then also be able to afford the volatility of Bitcoin? So that's where like the introduction of stable coins is a a benefit to them.
I get it.
Where I would like to kind of get in and kind of look at some of that and maybe like, is that true? Is that fully true? And I get it. And I'm here in Canada, and yes, we have inflation on our dollar and all that sort of stuff, but not to that level. It's easy for me to, play Monday night or Monday morning quarterback from my office chair or whatever on some of that stuff. But like I as a Bitcoiner, like I just don't love the idea of stable coins. I personally think that stable coins are a masked CBDC, as much as it's not going to be, completely controlled by the US government. Basically whoever is the most powerful in the world is going to have, you know, influence and control over companies, right? Because there's a central figure, there's a CEO, there's people behind it. And that's why you're seeing money being sanctioned with Iran. And if we were all just using Bitcoin, Lightning, whatever, and that's my thing, is that if we're building and putting all this money into stable coins and supporting that, and I get that there's benefit and there's growth that's happening there, but if all of that effort went into Bitcoin, and that's my big thing with altcoins and all that sort of stuff too, is that if all of that money, if all of that thinking power, if all of that went into building on Bitcoin, we would be farther ahead in terms of the problems that Bitcoin, can solve. And, I think the price of Bitcoin would be higher, all that sort of stuff, right? So that's just kind of where, I get it, but it just seems like it's a means to an end that I don't necessarily agree with the morals or the ethics behind it, or even just um the ethos of Bitcoin, right? And it doesn't jive with me, though I think, it does bring a lot of people into the Bitcoin space eventually, and adoption obviously becomes more apparent and all of that through stable coins and whatnot. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to figure out the hard way, like Iran using Tether, that yes, oh, I circumvented the system and sanctions and regulations just to have it frozen and be back to square one that way. Where if they just went to Bitcoin, they would have like $12 billion worth of Bitcoin rather than, seven.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point, and I agree, man. Um, Stable coins have their place. It helps out some people, but I think they're going to be used for evil in the future. Um, Pretty
They're
much.
controlled.
Yeah, exactly. Um, anyway, dude, happy pizza day. Hey, doesn't Kevin Warsh get sworn in today, doesn't he?
He
That's a fun.
does. I don't
Uh,
even know what time.
Me either. I was like, while you were talking, I was like, wait, I wonder. Yeah, so he gets sworn in today. Uh, it's a 3-day weekend for
Oh
us
yeah.
Americans.
We
We
had a
get
3-day weekend last weekend.
yeah. So um, I don't know when he gets sworn in. If it's this afternoon or something, probably like 2 o'clock if I had to guess.
Or when markets close and they'll say something about slashing interest rates and all of that, and we won't have any ability to benefit from it.
Dude, isn't that so frustrating?
It says
All
that here it says Kevin Warsh takes office at 11 a.m. today as President
oh,
Trump's new Federal Reserve Chair. But that's just me quickly looking here on X, but I haven't seen anything on X. But
so
yeah,
maybe it's
he's
official.
I it'll be interesting to see what comes from him. If interest rates will be slashed. I kind of think that the reason why he was picked was that he, kind of told Trump he would. But it's interesting, and I think I said this last week, that they came out with higher than anticipated interest or inflation rate numbers last week. And I think part of that was to kind of make it that people would say you can't do this now, and kind of give him the number to say that you can't do it because you can't slash rates while inflation is going up. But it'll be interesting to see if he kind of goes against what people are looking at. But
Yeah. I'll end on this because um, I don't know anything about bonds really, but I did. I mean, bonds are pretty much like government debt essentially, and so bond yields went up to like the highest rate since I believe 2007 is what I saw, which they also can't like raise rates. Like they're kind of in a weird spot. I don't know how he's going to navigate this. Like, good luck, Kevin Warsh, because I think you're screwed, buddy. Like,
there's no winning. You're
no,
either going to
there's
do
no winning.
something and have, somebody crackling in your ear over here, or you're having somebody crackling in your ear over here, and saying you're like, there's no, and that's where I kind of feel like he's just been brought in to be Trump's puppet in a way, as much as, the swearing in is that you're going to be,
Independent.
separate and independent. I kind of have my suspicion that he's not going to be independent that way, and he's just going to do whatever Trump wants him to do. And I think politically, as much as it'll be a mess, I think that Trump needs interest rates to come down because he can't have unemployment, he can't have inflation going up, he can't have the S&P 500 popping and all that sort of stuff being in an election year. As you guys move to midterms, he's going to want stock markets to be at all-time highs. I personally think he's going to want Bitcoin to be at all-time highs. He's going to want crypto at all-time highs, and he can stand up there, and say, look at the economy. Yes, there's inflation. Yes, there's this, but all this other stuff is outpacing all of that. And your mortgage rates are coming down. You're having more dollars in your pocket and all this sort of stuff, right? And that's got to happen if you want any possible success in the midterms as the Republicans, because it's not looking too promising right now. And even people who would support Republicans don't really seem to be, too eager to get out and actually vote that way. So, what's his thing that he's going to do? And Trump is all about, the markets and money, right, above everything else. And I think that's exactly why he picked Warsh. And so that's kind of where I think, Warsh is put in between two rocks, and he's just going to go to, the rock that's hitting him, which is Trump. And, maybe he surprises us in June with a rate cut, even though it doesn't really seem like there's any possible way, but we'll see.
I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Um, I mean, I'm buying Bitcoin no matter what, but I just wanted to say before we sign off, happy pizza day. I think I ate 3 slices during that.
Happy pizza day.
Thank you guys for listening. If you guys tuned in, I'm sure, or if you guys left a comment, thank you. And we will catch you guys next week on the Huddle Report, noon Eastern.
See you
Peace.
guys.